George Gopen here. If you haven't heard the hour that precedes this hour, I urge you to go back and do that, because this is the second half of a story, the first half of which is essential in order to understand what's going on. Okay? So let us bring up our text. What we have just found is a 14-line section of this disheartening sexual scene that describes the sexual encounter and the way it went. And we have 3 quatrains which are completely whole and follow the rules of the sonnet form, Elizabethan sonnet form, and then a couplet which slightly fails. Instead of being a whole rhyme, kiss with something that ends with is, it rhymes with unlit. So it's an off rhyme. Now, in all the reading I've done on the wasteland, I have found only 2 people who have noted that this could be a sonnet, neither of which did anything more than note that. It's not even mentioned by the extraordinary, let me bring up a full picture again, by the extraordinary Christopher Ricks. This is one of 2 volumes, actually 3 volumes, the poems of T.S. Eliot, and they are analyzed with detail overwhelming. Professor Ricks is an amazing fellow as far as a scholar. You can't get anybody who knows more about it. A teacher, I was privileged to be his student for 1 semester at Harvard back in the day, half a century ago, in a course on Milton. And he is really the last gasp in Eliot's scholarship, but even he does not comment on this passage, that what we've got here is an Elizabethan sonnet. Now, why is it of any note? I told you in the last hour, this is the most exciting moment, astonishing moment in the poem. And from what I've shared with you so far, it isn't very astonishing. It's just the possibility that that's a 14-line sonnet. We go on. Oops. This is the aftermath of that sexual encounter. He's gone. He gave her one final patronizing kiss. He's so far above her. They're there. And gropes his way. He gropes all the time, doesn't he? Finding the stairs unlit. Last detail of how squalid her digs are. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done. I'm glad it's over. We've got a perfect 4-line quatrain. We've got the rhymes, glass, pass, lover, and over. Now that's an I rhyme, E-Y-E rhyme. Lover and over don't sound the same, but it's perfectly fair game to rhyme one O-V-E-R word with another O-V-E-R word. That's within the rules. She turns, she catches her face in the mirror. She only has half a thought in her brain. And her comment is, now that's done, I'm glad it's over. Wow. All that activity, and this is the response. We go on. When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone, she smooths her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone. Well, it's a 4-line sentence. Is it a perfect quatrain? Well, alone and gramophone rhyme, but and hand, it's very difficult to make a rhyme with the word and, because rarely can you have it accented. We can't read this line, when lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone, she smooths her hair with automatic hand. So the and is even more of an off rhyme than the kiss and unlit. At least those were two monosyllables that were trying to rhyme with each other. The and doesn't even make an attempt. So the rhyming scheme has slipped a bit. And listen to the meter. She smooths her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone. Now, again, gramophones usually don't make their way into poems by 1922. They do now all the time under different names. Cell phones. But after all the stumbling over the word and, look at how smooth the rhythm is for the she smooths her hair with automatic hand. And does this bring us back in our memory to an earlier moment of the poem? Remember that ritzy lady at her vanity table with all unguent liquids, things reflecting on the lacquer area, and she uses the comb on her hair, and her hair spreads into fiery words and then is silent. This lady is just neatening up the place, like cleaning up the laundry. She smooths her hair with automatic hand. And then the next line is an automatic line about an automatic machine and puts a record on the gramophone. Technical, tactile, not emotional, kind of anti-emotional. Well, let's go on to the next thing. Let's listen to a song. But it was a quatrain with the problem of a rhyme gone bad. Let's return. We need a third quatrain if we're going to have a second sonnet. This music crept by me upon the waters. It's a quote. And along the Strand up Queen Victoria Street. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street. It's 4 lines. You were expecting 4 lines if you're expecting this is going to be a sonnet 2. Street and street are this inadequate rhyme reach where the same word rhymes with itself. And you get Victoria Street, Lower Thames Street. It isn't even a rhythm that rhyme. It's a bumbling rhyme. And waters and here, the ends of the other 2 lines, don't rhyme at all. So what have we got? We've got a disintegration of sonnet form. As we go through this second attempt at sonnet, that little degradation of the slant rhyme at the end of the first one spreads its poison through this second sonnet, which so far kind of looks like 3 quatrains. What is wrong with that third quatrain? Yeah, 2 lines don't rhyme. 2 lines rhyme very badly. And there's no real closure at the end of the fourth line. So the quatrain rule is falling apart too. This music crept by me upon the waters. Why is it a quote? Because it's quoting someone. Where does it take us back if you know the quote? Right back to the same seaside scene of the Tempest we've seen 2 or 3 times now with those are pearls that were his eyes. This music crept by me upon the waters. Ariel's song is that music. Well, let's go back and see if we got a couplet to go with our second sonnet here. This music crept by me upon the waters and along the strand up Queen Victoria's Street. Oh, city, city. I mean, it's fallen apart. These lines don't even go together anymore. I can sometimes hear, besides a public bar, where did a public bar come from? In Lower Thames Street, such a specific reference. And not the end of a quatrain, but do we have a couplet? The pleasant whining of a mandolin, and a clatter and a chatter from within. It's a couplet. It rhymes, mandolin from within. It has clatter and chatter that are a sound repetition, like poets like to do. And it sounds like you're trying to put together a good end to a defective sonnet. But if you continue, you see another defect. And a pleasant whining of a mandolin, and a clatter and a chatter from within where fishmen lounge at noon. There's an enjambment from the within to where fishmen lounge. We don't even have the second sonnet ending as a sonnet. There is no full closure at the end of the rhymed couplet. There's a rhymed couplet, but it doesn't end it. What are we seeing? Again, I'll say it. We're watching the disintegration of sonnet form before our very eyes and ears as we are making our way through these 2 times 14 lines. Now, are we going to get a third sonnet? It's certainly a possible expectation. Let's look. Where fishmen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold. Period. And what comes next? Woo! A complete different line length and meter, and you can see it on the page. It just trails down the middle of the page with 1 or 2 beats per line. And this, what's happened in the beginning of a possible third sonnet, where fishmen lounge at noon, where the walls. It has 5 stresses, like a sonnet's supposed to have. But fishmen lounge at noon, where? The noon and the where, that's not an easy progression of rhythm. It stumbles. And you get where the walls. You get the 2 W's, but nothing that seems to lift this into poetry. Where fishmen lounge at noons, where the walls. 2 wheres and a walls for W's. Of Magnus Martyr hold. Well, you've got the 2 M's, but you've only got of Magnus Martyr hold. You've only got 3 stresses. Where are the 5? So here's a further disintegration. The rhythm now is breaking down. We at least had the 5 stresses that we were supposed to have. We have 5, but it's an ugly 5. And then we only have 3. And then what do we get? Inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold. 7. Inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold. Wait a minute. 3 plus 7. That's 10. So these 2 lines together have 2 times 5. but the rhythm has completely fallen apart. The meter has completely fallen apart. And here we have Hold and Gold rhyming with each other as if he couldn't be bothered to write the whole third sonnet, and he's just going to write the right couplet and it's over. And that's all. This is astonishing. I don't know of another moment like it in all of poetry. He is juxtaposing the horrible, violent rubbiness of sexual contact in the wasteland at the violent hour with the high standards for love in Elizabethan England, represented by the presence of sonnet form. But that wondrous high love of Elizabethan England crumbles as we watch it go because its sonnet form crumbles, disintegrates, and becomes at the end eradicated by one final line to rhyme, 2 lines rhyming. Really amazing. So we move on. What can we do after this extraordinary thing has happened? And it has happened at the midpoint of the poem. We kind of we get here, and it all changes from here on in. What can possibly happen after this? Where do we go from there? Boom. The river sweats oil and tar, the barges drift with the turning tide, red sails wide to leeward swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash drifting logs on Greenwich Reach past the Isle of Dogs. Well, la 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 la, well, la 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 la. The sonnet has disintegrated, and now the rhythmic force explodes upon us. Only 2 stresses or 1 per line. And we got some rhyme, or don't we have some rhyme? And why do we wind up with well, la 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 la, which some critics have said, it winds up with nonsensical singing. Well, let's go back there and look at the rhyme stream and see if this is nonsensical. Sweats, tar, drift, tide, no rhyme. Sails, wide, tide wide rhyme. Spar, oh, spar rhymes with tar back there. Wash, no. Logs, no. Reach, no. Dogs rhymes with logs. So we've got rhymes, but nothing regular. The rhymes come, they go. You can't even predict if the next line is going to be rhymed or not. Now, here we have the Thames. How do we know it's the Thames? Because Greenwich Reach is on the Thames. East of London is where all of our watches are set from. The river sweats. This is the modern river. The Elizabethan sweet Thames runs softly till Amazon doesn't sweat. Oil and tar, oh, and the gas house. Yeah, this is 20th century. The barges drift with the red sails wide. River sweats, 2, oil and tar, 2, the barges drift, 2, with turning tides, 2, red sails, 2, but only 2 wide. To leeward swing on the heavy spar. 4. The barges wash. 2. Drifting logs. 2. Down Greenwich Reach. 2. Past the Isle of Dogs. 2. So you disintegrate down to 1, and then you expand to 4, and then get back to 2. Now, who in the world ever sang wa la 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 wa la 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 la? Oh, come on. Those are song lyrics. If they exist, they must exist in many places. No, 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 they're sung by 3 particular ladies. Guess who? The Rhine Maidens. At the beginning of Wagner's longed for opera Ring Cycle. They sing. So now we have the Thames and the Rhine combined. They are both one river, and the seaside of the Tempest. Just as all the women are one woman, all the men are one woman, they combine in Tiresias. Now, I have mentioned the Tiresias myth before. I'll fill in a couple of details for you, because all this was Tiresias before. The Thames came back. He once saw 2 snakes mating, and he killed them. And for that, he was changed from a man into a woman. He was a woman for, of course, 7 years. And then he saw 2 snakes mating. So he thought, gee, it worked last time. Why don't I give it a try again? And he kills them, and he's turned back into a man. And then one day, Juno and Jupiter, husband and wife, queen and king of the gods, are arguing who gets more pleasure out of sex, the man or the woman. And they bring in Tiresias. They say, you're the only person we know who's been both of these, so you ought to know. Who wins this argument? He says, Jupiter wins the argument. Juno is so furious, she strikes him with blindness. Now, Jupiter can't undo the blindness, but he can compensate. So he gives him perfect knowledge of the future. And that's how Tiresias becomes the blind seer. Now, should we all know this story? Well, the poet Eliot tells us all about it, almost. And if you really want to be annoyed at Eliot, now is the time to do it. Because he, in making a long note in the notes here, to fill those empty pages on Tiresias, tells us all this stuff. And he said, there's this passage from Ovid, and he doesn't tell us where in Ovid. That's a real interest. And it gives us the entire, 20-something line passage in Latin with no translation and no citation. Now that's to be annoyed at. That's to cut out everybody who either had a Latin education back when, or now has a translate button on their cell phone and can look this up, and it says translate, and you can translate it and you can read it for yourself. So that's how our man Tiresias got to be like this. Now we've got this passage with the 20th century Thames River. And we have the next passage now, which looks very much like the last passage, doesn't it? You see how they're very narrow lines? You see how they both end with the same refrain? We have another trip down the Thames. This time, instead of sweating in oil and tar, we're back in Elizabethan England, because here's Elizabeth and her primary lover, the Earl of Leicester, dear old Robin Dudley. Elizabeth and Leicester beating oars. The stern was formed a gilded shell, red and gold, the brisk swell rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers. Why, ah, la, 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 la. All of this has been cleaned up now. It's been resolved into the beauty of the Thames so many hundred years ago. The red and the gold, the gilded shell, the white towers, those buildings which were built all those hundreds of years ago were white at the time, dirt grains now. Rippled shores, southwest wind, there's zephyrs again in the western wind, southwest wind, and the peal of bells downstream. Lovely. And notice how the rhythms have smoothed out too. Meeting on, stern was formed, a gilded shell, etc. Now we are invited to include another body of water in our accumulated bodies of water, and that is the Nile, because this brings us back to thinking about Cleopatra floating down the Nile. The barge she sat in like a gilded throne gleamed upon the waters, which are the opening lines for a couple of changes for Our Lady at her vanity table in her boudoir. So that's where we've come to. We go on to a passage. I'm going to read it for you now. We'll look at it next time. You notice it's in quotation marks. Trams and dusty trees. Highbury bore me, Richmond and Kew undid me. At Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. 4-line quotation. Another 4-line quotation. Could it be the same person? No, because this person is distinguishing herself from the other one. My feet are at Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? And then we have another. On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands. My people, humble people who expect nothing. Who are these people? And then we get the end of the movement. La la. The la la is a disintegration of the way la la. To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest. Burning. Who are those 3 quotations from? You can't find them in literature somewhere so that we can go back to those works, see how they fit in here. No, they made up quotes. How many? 3. I've had lots of 3s in this poem. Who are 3 ladies we know of? The Rhine maidens. But these ain't no Rhine maidens. These are the Thames maidens. These are the nymphs departed from the river at the beginning of this. And what are they talking about? Sex gone bad in the wasteland. Tune in next time and we'll explore that passage. Bye for now.